Welcome back to the Dean Obeidallah Show. Right now, very happy to have back on our friend, Glenn Kirschner, former 30-year federal prosecutor, served in the U.S. Army in the JAG Corps. His YouTube channel, Justice Matters with Glenn Kirschner, just went over 1 million subscribers. That's right, 1 million subscribers. He also has a Substack that is very, very popular. Glenn, congratulations on 1 million subscribers.
Hey, thanks, Dean. Great to be with you.
When did you start that? 1 million? This is
5 years ago. Yeah, not what I had on my bingo card when I retired from the Department of Justice.
by 1 million. Do you feel like extra, like you're like sort of way, you're like a Kardashian of justice? You're like,
Well, thank you for the insult. No, look,
you're a celebrity in the world of justice. That's what I'm getting at. You could be
Yeah.
Leonardo DiCaprio, whoever you want to be, but you are big in the justice
Well, and you're
area.
like the Pete Dominic of comedy. So no,
that's horrible.
no. Listen, I think people are thirsty for straight information about what's really going on the legal front because they get so much garbage from Trump and all his flunkies and his mouthpieces, and so that seems to resonate with people. I mean, they need information they can use as they go about making their decisions about what to believe, what not to believe. I think that's why people like you and me and other independent journalists who are trying to, keep the focus on the rule of law and the Constitution and what's really going on. Because, Dean, at some point, the rule of law is going to come back into the light, and then we're going to need to hold folk accountable for what they're doing.
Oh, we're going to have the People's Tribunal, like in the Batman movie. I can't wait for this. Make them walk out on ice. Glenn's at 1 million subscribers. My YouTube channel, I'm only 981,000 short of Glenn. I've got 20,000.
Hit subscribe. Hey, everybody, hit subscribe on Dean's channel.
I don't say that. I don't do the show. I just post a few clips each week from interviews. That's all. Like this one will go up. So, all right, Glenn, let's talk about things that people need to know about. And this one's actually important because Stephen Miller, as much as he's a human gargoyle, actually has a lot of influence in the administration. He seems to almost be running it, frankly. And he said on Friday that they are actively looking into suspending habeas corpus. And he cited the provision of Article 1, which says you can suspend it for invasion. And can you remind people what habeas corpus is in case they hear this Latin term, they don't know what it means?
Yeah, loosely translated, it's present the body of the prisoner. In other words, if there's an allegation that our government is unlawfully, unconstitutionally detaining somebody, a judge can issue a writ, the great writ, the writ of habeas corpus, directing the government to bring me the body of the prisoner. And I will decide based on evidence whether he is being lawfully or unlawfully detained. And, Stephen Miller is completely untethered to the law or the Constitution. And when he says, you know what, Donald Trump may just unilaterally suspend the writ of habeas corpus, which would give Donald Trump the ability to imprison anybody he wants, including his political opponents. And those people would never have an opportunity to have the legality of their detention tested in court. But here's the thing. Stephen Miller needs to read Supreme Court opinions, like the one authored by Sandra Day O'Connor, saying only Congress has the authority to suspend habeas corpus. Or in case Sandra Day O'Connor is not conservative enough, maybe Stephen Miller should read an opinion authored by Antonin Scalia, the conservative deity on the Supreme Court for generations, who said only Congress can suspend the writ of habeas corpus. So, Stephen Miller, this is all talking points. It's to instill fear, and it's to keep us chasing BS claims by Stephen Miller and Trump and others.
What I've actually liked about over the years with Trump, the first term and now, it gives us a chance to explain the real law and the Constitution to people. Because nobody who was responsible would say, we might suspend habeas corpus, right? So now we actually have a conversation about it. Maybe they like Chief Justice Roger Taney, who was a racist, who said the same thing against Abraham Lincoln. And it's in Article 1. Folks, suspending habeas corpus is Article 1. What's Article 1? Congress. Article 2 is the president. Article 3 is the judges. It's kind of simple, and that's what the judges have been.
And Dino, let me follow up on that, because I love the point that we get to explain this stuff in layman's terms to the people. Right. So why does Donald Trump say, well, maybe I'll just try to suspend habeas corpus altogether? Because there's another constitutional right that he can't get around: due process. Two fancy words when you put them together. All it means is before the federal government can snatch you up and put you in a jail cell or stuff you onto a plane and send you to a prison in a foreign land. Your due process rights mean you get advance notice. The courts have ruled at least 21 days of what the government's going to try to do to you, and you get an opportunity to be heard in court, because Donald Trump doesn't get to make the decision about whether you should be detained and deported. Only judges get to make the decision. And because Donald Trump doesn't like the due process rights, he said, let me just suspend them all outright by suspending the writ of habeas corpus, which is the vehicle that lets people assert their due process rights. But of course, he's got nowhere to go because the Supreme Court knocks him down at every turn.
Yeah, and what is so concerning in that provision in Article 1 about suspending habeas corpus, it says two predicates. One would be invasion, the other is rebellion. And if they were allowed to suspend it, they could define what a rebellion is the same way they define invasion and say they're a peaceful protest. They got a little violent, or Democrats at a Tesla facility, or anyone at a Tesla facility that damages something. And then they're going to argue, we're going to suspend habeas corpus and put you all in jail. You know, Glenn, you've probably covered this. Many people call and go, can Trump impose martial law across the country? I don't see a vehicle from a federal point of view. I could see governors and local officials have certain powers. What is your take? I mean, is it the Insurrection Act the only way to arguably even get closer? Or is there really no way for a president to, with a stroke of a pen, go, martial law, everyone, if you go out after 5 o'clock, you're arrested, I'm arresting you?
Yeah, the problem is, Dean, when we're forever asking ourselves the question, can he do that? Is that lawful? Is that constitutional? The answer is almost always no, he can't do it. It's illegal and it's not constitutional. The reality is he can do things with this, signing of a Sharpie, just as he tried to revoke the constitutional right of birthright citizenship. He signed an executive order saying, nope, I've just done away with birthright citizenship, even though it's guaranteed by the Constitution. And of course, a Ronald Reagan appointed judge said, yeah, sport. He didn't call him sport. I call him sport. Yeah, Trump, that's blatantly unconstitutional. Those are Judge Coffenauer's words, appointed by President Ronald Reagan. So he can do it. He doesn't have a lawful vehicle to do it. He doesn't have a basis to invoke the Insurrection Act. But what has he been itching to do since his first term? He wants to deploy the military to the streets by any means necessary, lawful or unlawful, constitutional or unconstitutional, so they can do what? Shoot the protesters in the legs. That's what Donald Trump wants to accomplish, because he's a sadist and he's a narcissist, and he wants to wield the ultimate power, and he doesn't care if the Constitution gets in his way. He's going to keep using that Sharpie to try to accomplish what he wants to accomplish.
So just so people listening know, there's no constitutional or legal way for Donald Trump to sign in the office, I'm imposing martial law across the nation. He doesn't have that power. Governors could have that power in certain circumstances based on their own laws or their constitution, but the president doesn't. He
doesn't have the lawful authority to do it. There are no circumstances that would allow it or warrant it.
Very good. I'm glad we've got that. I'm chatting with Glenn Kirschner. Glenn, I just thought this was interesting. We talked about Stephen Miller. New York Times reports Stephen Miller is running the show at DOJ while Pam Bondi is, quote, playing the part like an actor. And it really says that the policies of DOJ are being dictated from the White House, just directly to it, and that Pam Bondi has to listen to Stephen Miller. That was New York Times reporting. I'm sure they'll deny it, but I found it kind of interesting that Trump is they're trying to control every part of his government. So they tell Pam Bondi what to do. And I'm sure she just says yes. I mean, I don't think there's any dispute there. We know that.
Yeah, she doesn't seem to engage in any analysis. Anytime there is a legal or quasi-legal issue that crops up about whether Donald Trump, has the authority to do something like accept a $400 million plane, which kind of violates the emoluments clause, receiving a gift from a foreign government without congressional approval. Bondi doesn't even have to think about it. She just says, it's fine. It's fine. And that's coming, if not from Stephen Miller, it's coming from her own innate sycophancy to just please dear leader. I mean, when she arrived on day one with a copy of Donald Trump's enemies list that she read aloud for the class, she literally on day one, having absolutely no information or evidence supporting these assertions, said, oh, we're going to be investigating Alvin Bragg and his staff. And Jack Smith and his staff and Letitia James and her staff and the J6 prosecutors and investigators. And that was a tell that she was not going to remain loyal to her oath, loyal to the rule of law, loyal to the Constitution. She was all in with her loyalty to Donald Trump and Donald Trump alone. And it doesn't surprise me that, Stephen Miller is acting as the funnel of what Donald Trump wants to do to the Department of Justice.
It really seems he is running every administration. There's someone with oversized influence. They look back, it could be Karl Rove with George W. Bush, with Obama, maybe Rahm Emanuel, maybe Ron Klain with Joe Biden when he was chief of staff, that kind of stuff.
Who was it said, I'm in charge here? Was it that?
Alexander Haig.
Alexander Haig.
That's a long time ago.
He's like a poor man's Alex Haig.
Alexander Haig. Yeah. Well, at least Alexander Haig, I think it served in the military and it served our nation. Stephen Miller serves Trump and only Trump and is an extreme right-wing jackass. So, Glenn, we talked a few weeks ago about the charges, the time they arrested the Wisconsin judge, Hannah Dugan, claiming she blocked the arrest of someone who was an undocumented immigrant, and ICE officials were there. The time she was just arrested, there was no grand jury. Now the grand jury indictment just comes out last night, and I'm holding it up that we can see it here. People can see it. It's literally one page. There's not a lot of details. It's very conclusory. And then they go, she violated 18 U.S. Code section 1505. And what I wonder here, so the grand jury did sign off on this. You mentioned Alvin Bragg, Jack Smith, when they did indictments of Trump or other important officials, even Robert Mueller, when it wasn't Trump, we got a lot of detail. And that gave you confidence in the credibility of it, that you saw the work that was done. You saw what the grand jury got to hear. And you're like, you know what? I may or not agree or not. This is a lot of stuff here. This to me gives me the opposite. It gives me no confidence. It makes it seem like it's a political game going on. So you're a former prosecutor. What's your take on it?
Yeah, a few things to unpack about any grand jury indictment and then this one against that Wisconsin judge specifically. First of all, when people make the joke that a grand jury will indict a ham sandwich if a prosecutor tells them to, my comeback is always, I do not find that to be true unless the ham sandwich committed a crime, and then I could probably get a grand jury indictment. But the quality of an indictment is only as good and honest and reliable as the prosecutor. Let me give our viewers some inside baseball. When we go into the grand jury, we don't even have to present firsthand evidence. What do I mean by that? You can present hearsay. They could take an ICE agent, put them in the grand jury, an ICE agent who wasn't even present at the time of the offense or the arrest, and say, well, I've reviewed reports, and those reports say this judge did crime. Any questions? Okay, I'm going to ask the grand jury for a vote. And I'm sorry to say, Dean, there are relatively few controls on the quality of grand jury presentations. It is the prosecutor's show from start to finish. There's no defense attorney. There's no judge. There's nobody but the prosecutors and the members of the community. And prosecutors can and have been known to snow the grand jury to get what the prosecutor wants. I don't know if that's the case here, but I know when we went after high-profile people, people of power and influence and position, we made sure our case was buttoned up, was bulletproof. There was so much evidence supporting that grand jury indictment that we were confident and comfortable that we could prove it beyond a reasonable doubt once we moved into a courtroom proper and presented it to a jury. I believe Paul Clement, the storied Republican lawyer who was the Solicitor General for George W. Bush and argued more than 100 cases before the Supreme Court. He's a lion in conservative circles, and also, I think, cares deeply about the rule of law and the Constitution, even if his political priorities are different than mine. I believe he's representing this judge, and I believe he is going to eat the lunch of the prosecutors they put up to try this case, because you better have rock solid evidence of criminal conduct plus evidence of criminal intent, guilty state of mind, mens rea, and you better have that judge saying, listen, I want to help you evade arrest, apprehension, and prosecution. Therefore, go out this side door and let me give you the escape route. Here's the mask you can cover your face with as you go. Right. I'm taking liberties here, but damn, it better be strong evidence. And I suspect, Dean, it's not strong evidence by the way they have rolled out this dog and pony show, which is less about substance and more about form. Look at us. We can even lock up judges if we deign to lock up judges.
And the mayor of Newark, and threatening to prosecute members of Congress, including Representative Bonnie Watson-Coleman, who was just on my show on Monday talking about the whole incident with Newark. Let me ask you, I can't find any law, so I guess there's none on this, but when we see police officers, even arresting really bad guys, unless they're undercover, but normal course of business, they don't wear a mask, and they have a badge, and they have a nameplate. And that gives us confidence and accountability that, like, if this person does something wrong, well, we have ICE agents who are arresting people in the suburbs, a woman just walking alone, and they're masked. You have the same thing when they're policing outside the ICE facility in Newark, and they surround the mayor. They're masked. They're not doing undercover work. They're masked there. What is your take on the idea of having the mask? And many, as Bonnie Watson-Coleman noted, and another congressman who was there, they have no badges, no badge numbers. You have no idea who they are whatsoever.
Yeah, you're supposed to wear insignia. You're supposed to display insignia, a badge number. You're not supposed to hide your identity because, you can think about the parade of horribles that would enable law enforcement to perpetrate and get away with if they were forever anonymous. I do think most of it is by procedure. For example, in Washington, D.C., the Metropolitan Police Department, the local cops of D.C. have what are called general orders, and they set out, how the insignia must be displayed. And I don't believe there is any law that says a police officer can't wear a mask, but it certainly should be like wildly against public policy because of the protect and serve responsibilities that police officers have. Well, with that comes accountability when and if they do wrong. So I agree with you. There may not be a law on the books that would make this a crime, but it sure is pretty transparent what they're trying to do. They want to be faceless men and women in the night who whisk people away and don't run the risk of being held accountable. I mean, listen, it's no secret that what they're trying to accomplish is not only fear and intimidation, but they want to avoid accountability because it sure looks like they are out there potentially violating the civil rights of folk. Because, and I say that, Dean, because when judges are taking on these cases of these detentions of protesters, professors, and others, they're being released one after another after another. That suggests that law enforcement is striking the wrong balance, perhaps intentionally so. So what do they want to do? Well, they want to shield themselves from accountability by wearing masks, by not wearing insignia, by not having a badge. And that is no way to go about policing in the United States of America.
And think about in the big picture, Glenn, that what we've covered, what the Trump regime wants are the idea of no due process, that they can suspend habeas corpus, and masked officers just disappearing people off the streets. That what their vision of America is not consistent with our Constitution or our nation as we know it. It is consistent with a dictatorship, a fascist regime in other nations where you just scoop you off the streets for whatever reason that the regime says you're gone and you don't even know who took you away and your family has no idea who you are. Add to that, there are Trump supporters doing cosplay, pretending to be ICE agents, grabbing people. And some of them have been arrested, thankfully, for that. But look at their vision for this country.
Yeah. And so, Dean, my question is, when will there be some Republicans in Congress who are willing to cross the aisle to save democracy? What is a bridge too far? If Donald Trump says, you know what, I'm just going to need to deport all members of Congress to El Salvador because they're standing in the way of what I'm trying to accomplish, would the Republican members of Congress stand up and say, that's genius, Mr. President? What plane should we board? When, I've said this before, it's like there was a time in our nation's history when people need to show courage and they needed to fight to save the Union. Those people had to pick up muskets, step out onto open grassy fields and fight, sometimes brother on brother, right? Putting life and limb on the line. Republicans don't have to do that. They don't have to step out on the grassy fields and fight brother on brother or sister on sister. All they have to do is cross the aisle to save democracy. People like Senator Murkowski and others should overcome their fear and they should save democracy, because at some point it's going to be too late, even for the people who think they are now in Donald Trump's good graces. They will fall out of those good graces. So how about you protect democracy for your own damn constituents and for the rest of us?
And I'm talking with our friend Glenn Kirschner. Glenn, I want to get your reaction. I know you did, I think, a video, or at least you posted about it. You may have done a video on the person Trump nominated to be the head of your old office. Ed, stop the steal Martin, as you call him. Trump nominated him to be DC U.S. attorney. And in this case, for what it's worth, at least one Republican senator came out publicly and others probably went privately, and it was never going to happen. So he pulled him. But how concerned were you that a guy like Ed Martin was going to be U.S. attorney in D.C.?
Yeah, I was thrilled to see Senator Tillis stand up and say, ain't going to happen. I'm on the Senate Judiciary Committee. Ain't going to happen. And Senator Thune pretty quickly said, yep, looks like it's not going to happen. So there was very little hesitation to tell Donald Trump, no, you don't get Ed Stop the Steal Martin as the top prosecutor in D.C. So I was heartened by that. And I hope, see, here's what I believe, Dean. As the Republicans begin to stand up one issue at a time, it's Ed Martin today. Maybe it will be, not kidnapping American citizens tomorrow. It will make it easier for them, not harder for them, to continue to stand up to Donald Trump's abuses. But of course, who do we have coming in behind Ed Martin? Jeanine Pirro. Right now, here's what I'm going to say. Yes, she's been like on Fox Entertainment forever. Yes, she's part of a network that was responsible for having to pay out $750 million because it lied to the American people about our 2020 presidential election, the voting machines and all that. Here's what I am going to say.
Okay.
At least she was a district attorney for a decade in Westchester County. She was a judge for a few years. I hope she retains some of that muscle memory, some of that justice muscle memory in her. But I don't believe she'll be so fast to engage in the kind of abuses of office and of power Ed Martin engaged in. For gosh sakes, Ed Martin, as acting U.S. attorney, wrote a letter to universities saying, I understand you're teaching and promoting DEI. That is unacceptable. I will investigate you and prohibit all your graduates from ever working at the U.S. Attorney's Office. First of all, you know what, sport? It doesn't matter what you find acceptable or unacceptable that's being taught by law schools or universities. And you can't abuse the power of the Department of Justice to investigate things that they're teaching that you don't like. That was such a gross abuse of the power of a federal prosecutor. And I hope at some point he may have earned himself sanctions from Bar Council, if not disbarment. That may be the only thing he gets to take home from his few months as acting U.S. attorney for the District of Columbia, because he's been referred for ethics violations 4 times over. I believe 1 was dismissed, but 3 are still pending with the D.C. Bar Council. And the way he abused his office and his power, I think he's going to get tagged for ethical violations. And I just hope Jeanine Pirro is a little bit better than that.
Well, I hope she has some more wine spritzers and just sits back and watches things and have fun. Like I did meet Jeanine Pirro years ago. She's actually of Arab heritage. She's Lebanese. Her name, that's her married name. And so we were at the Arab American Institute function together. We were both, like, I was speaking, she was speaking. And this is before she was on Fox News as like a legal analyst. She was not this. And she was actually kind of nice, and then I haven't talked to her in years. I'm not gonna say we're friends. I doubt she even remembers me, but then to turn into this caricature of a legal analyst is ridiculous. Last thing, because you touched on Ed Martin, what's going on with him. Alina Habba in New Jersey, the U.S. attorney, acting U.S. attorney there, publicly saying things about the case with Mayor Baraka, and got warned by the federal magistrate to not comment on this. I wonder if that's the way that that's one way to sort of rein in the outrageousness of the Trump lawyers, that they could be disbarred and Trump can't pardon. That has nothing to do with it.
Accountability by state bar counsel is a beautiful thing for a couple of reasons. First of all, it is beyond the reach of the federal government. Federal government can't tell the New Jersey State Bar, if they initiate an ethics investigation on Alina Habba, that they have to do anything. It is exclusively up to the New Jersey State Bar. And the other thing, Dean, I can tell you, when federal judges say something hypercritical of a prosecutor or make a finding, as did Judge Sines, who is the Maryland federal court judge presiding over the Abrego Garcia case, when she said the DOJ prosecutors are presenting the court with, quote, falsehoods and engaging in, quote, willful bad faith. And now we can maybe throw the Alina Habba admonition from the federal magistrate into that bucket. Those things go to state bar, and they're investigated. There are sanctions up to and including disbarment if they are found to be accurate. And when federal judges say it, Dean, it's like an instant fact proven. It's not a mystery that prosecutors are saying and doing these things in federal court. So the power of the federal judges to say things and enter findings that will come back to haunt unethical DOJ lawyers, and unfortunately, the ranks of the unethical DOJ lawyers are on the rise, courtesy of Donald Trump bringing people in. So yeah, they're all, I think, going to get theirs at the end of the day. Now, when the end of the day will come is anybody's guess.
We'll see. It was good to see your friend Bobby De Niro fighting the other day in Cannes, doing a great speech. Last thing, Glenn, where can people where do you want them to follow you? Is it YouTube, Justice Matters with Glenn Kirschner? Where's the best place?
Yeah, so Justice Matters, that's my channel on YouTube. Please hit subscribe, because, Dean, I never say hit subscribe either. But when I got really close to 1 million, for like the first time, I said, would you all mind hitting subscribe? I got 20,000 new subscribers overnight because I never ask people to hit subscribe. And also over on Substack, you and I, are over there together. It's great fun. I go on and do a Substack live around 8 p.m. every night. I'll be on with Joe Walsh tonight. And I'm really enjoying the kind of completely independent platform that Substack gives us. So, find me on Substack, find me on YouTube.
I wish you were having it with Joe Walsh from the Eagles, more so than the former Republican, because I'm more of a fan of him. I like the other Joe Walsh. All right. Thanks, Glenn. Thanks so much for being on. Have a great night, my friend.